Hey everyone, quick PSA before we actually get into everything. This particular episode was recorded prior to several announcements being made. It's come to our attention that the three events that we've been hyping for the last several weeks, Gaming vs. Cancer, the Hunter Burton Memorial Open, and our own grand tournament, are all being postponed due to the coronavirus in order to comply with recommended safety guidelines. I apologize that I have to bring this news to you, but we felt it was appropriate to get this out in front of this week's episode. You can find additional details on the social media pages for each of these events. Please, everyone listening and watching, please stay safe and healthy. And at this point, we'll hand it off to the show. Welcome back, everyone, to Tech Talk, the officially unofficial Transformers TCG podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Scott of VectorSigma.info. We're going to dive into, well, all of the reveals, which at the beginning of this week, even, I know this is now becoming a joke that we keep saying this, but it seemed like it was going to go relatively quick, and then it kind of spiked. And I think we even allegedly missed some reveals at the time of this recording, as in people said they were going to get them out, but I never saw them show up.
Yeah, and I might have been wrong about some that may not actually have more of them, for example. I mean, I don't know that. I only know one of them that said they would have them out, and it's not out yet. So
exactly. I'm sure they'll turn up. I mean, there's still plenty of time between now and official release, so we'll play it by ear. But we're going to dive right in with the battle cards first. And we actually got a couple of these just a few hours ago, and some of them seem kind of promising, some of these cards. Not just the battle cards, all of them. But the first one we're going to take a look at is Emergency Repair Patch. It's a blue pip armor. It gives you 1 defense, and it's an Autobot card, because when you put this on an Autobot, you repair 1 damage from it. Now, I'll be honest, the first thing that came to mind when I looked at the artwork is Optimus has a boo-boo and Ratchet got a Band-Aid. But I swear to God that sentence went through my head. Maybe it's because I have kids. I don't know. But in all seriousness, for the actual card, I mean, I don't know. I don't really have strong feelings about it. What about you, Scott?
I think the major use I think that it'll have is if you put the safeguard head on Autobot Nautica, it gets around them using some kind of I'll just armed hovercraft your team, or I'll just zap that guy, or something like that. That's one example of where I think it might come into play. But I mean, at that point, you're just basically making a little slightly better force field by making that play.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're just getting the safeguard 3 and only taking 3 instead of taking 4. But obviously healing the 1 also. So you would basically wind up with, at the end of all this, you'd wind up with, instead of 5 damage on you, only having 3 damage on you, which I guess is, the armor's there. So
that's not an unheard of trick, because you could have, up to this point, done it with Ramhorn and Medic's Protective Shield, I think is right. I know I can picture the card in my head, but it's Medic something or other.
Yeah.
This one being slightly more restrictive because it does require an Autobot, but obviously there are some changes. I don't know. It's fine. I don't anticipate a whole lot of it. We don't have a shockwave for Autobots right now, so.
Yeah, I think you need, I continue to say this till the cows come home, or whatever analogy you want to use, but repairing 1 is just not impactful at all. I understand that there's ways to get that number higher, but they're just not, those cards just aren't worth the effort, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, it's notable that it's a blue armor too, so it's, the Medic one is a white pip. It's, it's inching closer, but I don't think it's there. Maybe.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of was the Autobot Nautica safeguard trick. So.
Right. Well, let's move on from there to Enhanced Power Cell, which, at least in my opinion, was more interesting, and that is a new utility. It's a single black pip, and the upgraded character has +3 health. So now we have +2 health, +3 health, +4 health from a variety of armors and utilities. I mean, this seems like it's hitting that threshold where it might actually have an impact.
I mean, I guess like the pip still really hurts it in my opinion, but there are a
Oh,
lot
for
of
sure.
cards that there are a lot of cards that key off of playing black pips now, especially like
Yeah.
some of the Titan Masters. So I'm not too worried about that. So I think there could be use there. I mean, it's not as good as Energy Pack, obviously, but a lot of times for a big dude deck, like honestly, Energy Pack can be a quote off-color pip also. So it's not much different
Right.
there, other than obviously it's better with like Galaxy Prime, which is the standout for the card. But like there are pretty much any big dude deck was always running like it as a one of.
Right.
So without the restriction of having to be 11 stars or less, obviously this has a slightly lesser power level and a different pip, but still an offensive pip in what is usually a defensive deck. But I don't think that's that big of a deal. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this card as long as you.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you have a use for black pips and like especially if you're using horrible, like this is a great combination with horrible. I assume it doesn't work if it's like if he's like at 1 hit point remaining, but outside that one corner case scenario, I feel like this should see play. I just don't know if it's necessarily going to see.
Actually, I think that would work because it's going to create the trigger. You're playing it, the trigger goes on. I would think the card would land. Maybe not. Now that I'm saying
other
that
card
out loud.
games, it would. In other card games, it wouldn't work.
It's definitely that. Yeah, going by other card games has definitely caught me before. So we'll wait for that one. But yeah, I like it because it does. Well, Energy Pack is not really a restriction. Like, yeah, there's a restriction on who it can go on, literally. But in reality, it doesn't matter that much most of the time because clearly you wanted your big guy that it's obviously supposed to go on. And at that point, you're just kind of filling it out from a team comp perspective. But this does give you more flexibility, and given the Titan Master combinations, maybe you're 10-10-5 again sort of thing, but you still have a guy that you want, like maybe one guy is major in one of your Titan Masters is important in your aggro matchups, one's important in your control matchups, or you could shuffle this around to make one guy more important. Again, it's just a flexibility thing. In reality, we're probably looking at still more Energy Pack, but it's nice to have the option.
I mean, we've seen the power of Energy Pack, but in +3 health on a defensive deck is essentially like 3 plus your armor, which is generally going to be like at minimum another turn that you're adding to the clock. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, it's nothing. It's out of a utility slot. So I mean, like again, like I think as a default utility, if you just want to run one, this is going to fit the bill. Obviously, like the Black Pips isn't helping you much, but Pierce is getting a lot of support in the set, and Black Pips are getting support in the set to play them. So I think this will see a decent amount of play, especially in those decks, which is what I think the set is basically leaning to do. Like the cards are individually powerful in their own set, and there aren't as many like just slam this card into every single deck. But I do think in the decks that want it, this will be pretty good.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm sure there will be some deck, if not in this wave, then in the near future, just based on what historical precedent, that will want this sort of thing and this pip. So
yeah.
We will move on from there to hand-to-hand combat. So this is a blue melee pip. It's an action. Choose one of your characters. When it attacks this turn and doesn't have a weapon, it gets +3 attack until the end of battle, and you scrap all the defender's weapons. And I think the most comical thing I saw is Rip Predaking, because my man, the hits just keep coming, and he just can't catch a break.
Sure.
Not that like he was on the cutting edge competitive lineup, but it's just like, boy, he can't catch a break.
So the main question I have for this card is the Javelin question and the things like Sound Blaster question. I think you can stack these all in order to be in the favor of how you want it, i.e. get the +3.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not entirely sure because I think all these things happen. All these things have the same exact trigger, so I think that you can like stack them and resolve them.
It the way you want it. Yeah. This one, I know we were talking about this offline. My counter argument, at least for now, and it's not like nope, this is the way it is, slam my fist on the table. It's very much, we'll have to see how Wizards rules it, is that this has a similar double check, for lack of a better way to describe it, as Springer, where it checks when it triggers, and then it also checks when it tries to resolve and actually do its thing. That being said, we'll see. Let's assume that you can do everything the way you want to, like you were saying, Scott, whether it's Javelin or it's another card like Sound Blaster, you can get the quote-unquote stack of effects to go off in the order that you want them to. Is this that much better than Leap into Battle that you care about this?
I mean, no.
That was, yeah. I was trying to lead you like, come on, Scott, tell me this card's great.
I mean, the only way I can see it actually seeing play in that situation would be in like control mirrors, where you actually like
your random dork could kill their major weapon.
Yeah, like if your combat pump is also like acting as a like sort of reprocess, sort of sabotage weapons on an offense, like whatever you want to call it, then you're actually getting value out of it. I just actually don't think that you're getting enough universal value out of this card to make it justify being a blank for non-melee, and having 4 melee to jump through hoops to make it a leap.
Yeah, the melee pip is a little weird because if you want to leap, go play leap outside of that control mirror scenario, which, to be fair, we're seeing a lot of trucks show up. We're seeing trucks that are viable. A lot of trucks are melee in alt mode, and you could say post wheel, because nothing ever dies for 1,000 turns for the rest of eternity in control mirrors. You could post wheel, say, all right, my guy that is going to get in first because he's blocking gets in and pops their major character's weapon, setting them back, hypothetically. Problem is that then they would have a few turns to go find another weapon.
Yeah, that would be... I mean, like, if it was armor, obviously, it might be too powerful, but I think
as a trait pip and a non-aggro trait pip, maybe it would be fine. Just because then you wouldn't be, auto slamming it into aggressive decks, or maybe you would, to your point. I'm not sure.
I mean, we've said for almost every trait stamp pip, except for, like, Master of Metallicato and, like, the untapped car one, that, like, it seems like they're costed, like, a little underpowered, but, like, I kind of get it, but because the card... But we'll see. I mean, like, I'm sure it's fine, but, like, it just seems like a lot of hoops to jump through for not a super powerful ability when a mirror for this card just sees such universal play without any downside whatsoever. Literally no downside other than, I don't know what, not being orange. Like, is that a downside? Like, I don't even know. There's no downside to leap, obviously.
Yeah, it's, I don't know. I'm looking at chat. There are a couple things like brass knuckles is a utility because of things like this. I could see that. Possibly good for patrol decks. I'm not sure about that one just because it doesn't have the green, and the major patrol deck being airstrike. They're not going to, I can't imagine they're going to lean into, I mean, they could be playing leap already if they really wanted that effect, to your point, Scott.
It's like, are you already going to play, like, you're basically playing leap in a control deck that has melee characters, and, like, are there control melee characters? Like,
I was about to say that, yeah. I mean, there are in the supplemental characters, but I was thinking about this offline, preparing for the show, that, like, I couldn't immediately think of a big, a Jetfire, a Galaxy Prime, a Shockwave level character that's melee, other than Battlefield Legend. Well, Nemesis or Battlefield Legend in alt mode. It's like, sure. I'm not super enthused.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, and the other problem is control decks want to stick their own weapons, and so it's like, I just don't understand where this... I don't really understand where this sees play. That's my problem with it right now. Like,
Octone in alt mode being suggested. I mean, yes, in one of them he is, but
but the problem is like you have to be in these modes when you're flipping, and like I just don't. And you have to not have a weapon that sticks. Like that these are all the problems. Like so.
It's a potential, I guess, as a sideboard option for this niche scenario that we're concocting. That if all the stars align, great.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't know. Although I do agree with one offline comment that I saw somebody either on Twitter or somewhere that said, if this is, a Wizard sometimes does storyline art, like, they were talking about special delivery and frag toss were kind of like the same scene, quote unquote. If this is the same one as whatever the one we previewed where Megatron and Optimus are fighting, and we were talking about which version of Optimus it is, it feels like this is the continuation of that, but we'll see if we get a third option to explain who actually wins that fight. But anyway, we'll move on from there to, I was going to make a joke, but it's high five.
The jokes I made are probably not appropriate.
So it's Green Pip. It's an action. Choose 2 of your characters. If they share a trait, repair 1 damage from each of them. Somebody said or made a reference to rest and relaxation, and I think that sums it up.
Does it? You actually have to have the 2 characters at all times, right? Like, there's no.
What do you mean?
Like if you have 1 character left on the battlefield, does this do anything?
Choose 2 of your characters. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, yeah, it's literally dead at that stage.
I hope the people that said this card was playable were joking.
I didn't see anybody say that. Did you?
Oh, I saw people say it was decent. I mean, I'm hoping they're just the people that say every card's decent. So
I mean, I've said on multiple occasions I would love for a healing deck, a healing repair based deck to exist just for kind of the lulz, but I don't think this is the card to make it happen. So it is cool that officially, canonically, high fives repair Transformers. You want to know how they survived 4+ million years of war? Lots of high fives.
I guess so.
Do we get a bro fist in the next set, and is that going to heal too?
I hope so. Or an elbow.
Elbows, yeah. No, it's going to be a wave. You know what? We're not going in there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so mission briefing is our next card. It is a white pip and a green pip. You draw a card for each character you have on the battlefield in bot mode or body mode, and I think this was another one that we had a lot of entertaining conversations about offline. I'm not super optimistic about this card's viability competitively unless there's some really weird scenario.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up offline the Battle Master scenario because they start off in bot mode. There's also like the Blaster scenario where he has to flip to bot mode. So and also the cassettes come out in bot mode. So like there's that.
Yeah,
that's one scenario I can see maybe. But like, I mean, for me personally, like I don't like Pep Talk as a card. I'm on record saying that numerous times. Like I don't think it's worth it to spend your action phase to draw 2 cards. And I don't think you could hope for much more than that out of this card ever. So basically you're just getting a white-green Pep Talk, which is like, it's fine.
I don't even know if it's better than Pep Talk necessarily, to your point of drawing 2 cards isn't significant enough in a lot of scenarios. I just don't think you're going to have enough time to, and I kind of see where this is going, or where this was coming from in design, is that the heads deploy in bot mode. You're going to flip the remaining. So if you have a Titan Master and 2 other characters, because you're going to pop off the head, hypothetically, it's, oh yeah, I'll flip my other characters. I should, air quotes, have enough time to make this a draw 3. I struggle to see where you're ever going to get 4 out of this, but maybe there's some weird combination to make it happen. But it's, if you're not getting at least 3, I don't know.
I mean, the only scenario I can see it seeing play is that of control deck sideboards for other control decks, because basically a lot of those
that makes sense.
Still come down to it's not card advantage, it's card selection. So like,
Right.
I mean, it still comes down to that.
You need to find specific things, and maybe a draw 3 is good enough because, you're slapping each other with fish like it's a cartoon.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's still going to be decent against Shockwave and other discard decks because, like, even though he himself hits hard, like, he usually attacks last, so it's possible that you could, draw 3 off this card and come back from their blowout turns because it is white and green, so, like, there's a lot of opportunities to grab it. But, like, I just, like a lot of other cards, I think it will see niche play in sideboards, but every time I say that, like, I feel like I need like a 50 card sideboard, so who knows what we're actually going to wind up with. So
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cards that definitely fall into that category, and it's easy to just say that because there are scenarios we can think of that it could work, but is it impactful enough? As you said, card advantage isn't really the standard metric with the way this game operates. Card selection is important, but now it's a different discussion than just saying, how many plus cards am I? I don't know. I'm not super thrilled about mission briefing.
No, me either. I mean, I can see a scenarios like small niche scenarios where it's important, but overall, I don't think it's that great.
Yeah. So we'll move on from there. Chad is debating alternative options.
Sure.
And they did point out, I guess we didn't say that, although I definitely had it in my notes somewhere, that it is one of the few draw cards with a green pip, so it is notable on that front.
Of course, yeah.
So, but let's move on to Paralyzo Box, ? I think that's how you say that. So it's another white and green pip, but the green pip is ranged, which we'll get to in a second because that brought up some debate, as a lot of these trade icons do. So it's a weapon, and when the upgraded character attacks, choose a battle icon color. Then your opponent reveals the top card of their deck, and if it has a battle icon of the chosen color, the upgraded character gets +4 attack until end of turn. So it's a inconsistent grenade launcher, we'll call it. And inconsistent may be generous.
So how many times have you ever seen Emergency Defense Field see play?
What does that card do?
Exactly.
I can actually picture the card, but I always confuse that. Is that the one that it's odd and even damage, or is that the one that halves the damage? Okay, I always confuse a couple of those.
It's the even one because, like, basically, like, if you run the expected value of the card, it's always like half of your, like, whatever you take. It's just like this card. Like, it's going to be +4 a certain period of the time and 0 the rest of the time.
Well, I think this has a few advantages simply because there are ways in the game currently to control this actively. They're all related to Soundwave. And it gives me an excuse to look at Soundwave, but I
think him as a bot is the only excuse. I think the star card one is not viable because it's a star card.
Well, yes.
But I mean, if you're going to put like Laserbeak and some other range character as the 7 in your deck, or however you're going to run that, I guess it's okay. That's the only situation I can see. But the problem is like, how many flips do you have left to even get the ability off at that point? So I know some people said like, oh, this really hurts monocolor decks. Well, I mean, building your deck with a monocolor really hurts monocolor decks in terms of power level. So,
right, but yeah. I didn't really have a good, I don't want to say counterpoint, but any other follow-up to that.
I mean, like, I played enough Galaxy Prime to where, like, people wanted to run Reclaim, and then basically what you would do is, like, okay, I'm going to Reclaim, and they would put, like, the energy pack on top, being like, well, most of my deck is blue, so let's just say they didn't have the, like, a bold effect out there. Well, most of my deck is blue, so if I purposely put the orange on top, I should hit it, and then you don't, and then you're sad. So, like, because then you wasted your action phase, and you didn't get what you were setting up anyway. So, like, I just see how, like, if this wasn't a weapon, I don't know that it could be anything else, but like...
I feel like if this was like a utility, I'd feel a lot better about it.
Like, if it was +1 and then gave you +3, I would feel better. If it was +2 and gave you +2, I would feel better. But the fact that it's 0 and to 4 is just like, there's no middle ground.
Yeah, being that
And so-
swingy is concerning.
Yeah, like, I honestly think it would probably see play if it was any one of those two scenarios. Even if it was +1, +3, and like +1 permanently and then gave you +3, I could see where it would be fine. I still think it'd be underpowered, but like not that underpowered to run like as a 1 or 2 of in certain decks. But like as it stands now, like the all or nothing aspect of it without any way to set it up, unless we see cards that mirror the Soundwave ability in some way, shape, or form, I just think it's probably...
I feel like this is a precursor to the fact that we won't. Because if this was consistent, I think that would be a problem. Like, if you could...
It's not going to be consistent unless it's green or like whatever. Like, it's only a one-time use. Like, do you really care if it's a one-time use?
Well, I guess if you had enough range characters so that you could go fetch your grenade launchers, but by the same token, if you had to play, let's say the Soundwave card was not it was not a star card. So instead of getting +8 in the dream scenario of grenade launcher plus reckless charge, you're getting like +5 or so from this, and then presumably you're putting a non-combat pip, like a blank or something on top.
It has to be a color.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It actually has to be a color. So a non-blue, a non-white, so orange, black pip, whatever. You put something like that on top, so it's air quotes +5. I don't know if that's even good enough there.
I mean, it's a permanent weapon, so like that would be the only benefit. But like we're saying, even these scenarios where you're finding ways to even make it hit 100% of the time, you can't hit it. You can maybe do it once, and then you won't have the flips available to you. Won't have. Yeah,
you're jumping through a lot of hoops to. I mean, don't get me wrong, grenade launcher's good, but like that's a number of hoops.
Yeah, with only one character as it stands right now to actually make this happen, I just can't see where
well, Chad has an idea. There's Wave 1 Skywarp. How about them apples? And he cares about white pips.
Does he look at
Kablamo!
The top card of your opponent's deck or something?
Yeah, when he flips to alt mode, each player reveals the top card of their deck. So, yeah.
And it's not wrong. I mean,
yeah, no, it's not. It's not. It's just, again, hoops. And they're also saying it does give it to the character, which is notable, so it gets around armaments.
Armaments, yeah. I mean, those are fine. I mean, that is a scenario, so that's fair.
I do agree. This is why I like Chad being in here to keep us honest with some of this stuff. So, it's fun when they drop the ideas in there.
I mean, it's not much different than what I wrote about Beachcomber, other than he's the one that starts in play instead of the card. So, I mean, at that point, like, you're getting a one-time use out of it. So, like, I guess my point is just play grenade launcher. Like, most of these situations. Oh
yeah, I don't think anybody was going to do that. It was just a matter of, is this grenade launcher? I mean, I don't think it would be 4 through 6, but could you squeeze one in? And bottom line is, it needs help, and right now I don't think that help exists.
We need cards that have ebbs on them.
Yes. Shout out to when you said that. When you had said that offline, for anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's a magic card that put a creature. You wouldn't be able to do it in this game because that would be insane. On top of put a creature on top of the owner's deck.
Yeah.
I was trying to desperately think if there was that effect sooner. And the only other card I thought of was Plow Under, which came after and also didn't do creatures, but whatever. Anyway, digression aside, we'll move on from the pseudo grenade launcher to Spy Satellite Uplink, and this will be the end of our battle cards.
What a crop of winners these have been.
What was that?
What a crop of winners these have been.
Oh yeah. Well, I liked some of them. Well, some may be an exaggeration. I liked a couple of them, and liked, not loved. So Spy Satellite Uplink is a black pip and a green pip. It's a utility. It gives the requisite +1, so we're okay there. Enemies can't use Brave or Stealth against the upgraded character. So it's whatever that card with Shockwave in the art is. Battlefield Scan?
Yes, that doesn't see any play, even though it should at certain points.
And that, correct me if I'm wrong, the wording on Battlefield Scan is they just lose it for the turn. Like everybody and your whole team. So if you have more characters and it's on the wheel, like everybody can get in.
Yes, exactly.
As compared to this, where it's only single character. See where I'm going with this?
Well, not only is it single character, but there's a limited window where this is actually relevant, which is the problem with Battlefield Scan, because like you still can only attack a tapped character. So even if you were to take away stealth from from like one of the untapped guys, like only if you had,
it has to be post wheel basically, or some way to dodge the tapped guy.
I mean, I guess you could make the argument that if you're playing Razor Claw, Legendary Warrior, Bumblebee, then this is fine. It just because like both of them then at that point would be fine. You're either losing your quote action phase or losing your upgrade phase to play one of these two effects to get in on the Tailwind, the Powertrain, like the Lord basically is what you're using this card for, right? Like there's no other reason to use this. So like,
unless the red heat variants of combo sort of thing come back. Like it would have. I mean, what is it? It's Micromasters, the patrols, and like a couple other random characters.
Yeah, that have like tidal waves, like like things like that, or like shutting off Brave or something like that. Like if that would matter, which it really doesn't matter all that much either. But like,
well, at least now. I mean, maybe there'll be a resurgence of those characters.
So like that's like I guess if you're playing those characters, that's the real option I can see, and I would probably just run like. I still think it would be out of the sideboard, but at least then the hard part, which is actually getting to the character, would already be taken care of through the combat ability on the character, which is where you always want like in any one of these, like I'm gonna merge like a character ability with a card, that you obviously want the harder part to be on the character ability, or the the payoff to be on the character. So I guess that's a scenario I can see where you would run this out of the sideboard for specifically like airstrike decks or other patrol decks, but otherwise, like as universal play, Battlefield Scan already exists, and you're going to have the same window of playing both of them, so like I would probably just play Battlefield Scan instead. Yeah,
I mean, it gives you options to your point about which slot on your turn you are consuming.
Right.
I doubt anybody's going to 6 copies so that they can have 3 of these and 3 Battlefield Scans, but there is that option if you really want to. I don't know, something had to fill out the common and uncommon slots for the upcoming set, and we happen to see several of them today. I think
I'm sure it helps. I'm sure it helps in limited, which is the point. So.
Oh yeah. It's actually I'm curious, since in speaking with Drew in some of our past interviews, the how they're going to look at limited going forward. I mean, for EI it was Siege. Maybe it's going to be a larger pool. I don't know. We'll see.
The set seems pretty friendly for limited, so.
Yeah. So that will close it up for the battle cards. We're going to try and squeeze everything into a single show tonight. Our next one is the one and only body that showed up this week in Reveals, and that is Mindwipe. So Mindwipe Hypnotist is a beast in alt mode. He's a 4/12/2 for 9 stars. And when you flip to alt mode, you choose a battle icon color, then look at your opponent's hand and scrap a card from it that has the same battle icon of that color. In body mode, he's melee 5/12/1, and when this attacks and you flip at least a black pip, your opponent scraps a card from their hand, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and scraps it. If they can't, you draw a card. Sorry about botching that one. I don't really have any enthusiasm for Mindwipe at all. I'm not gonna lie.
So you're Siege 2 Thundercracker in body mode with a little bit of slightly worse on the discard and slightly better on the fact that you can draw no cards, and you flip to Espionage, basically, right?
Yes, for 9 stars on what I would consider. I mean, yes, there are 1-star head options, so you could get away with 10, and I guess he's okay stat-wise at 10 stars.
I mean,
I don't know.
I don't know. Like,
yeah, we're both like, it's.
I mean, because I guess just the fact that he's gigantic is why. I mean, this isn't. Is it? I guess it's not. Like, the flips aren't that much worse than Shockwave, but obviously the body that it comes with is way worse. So I guess that's pretty much the issue. So
yeah, if you want to go this route, I mean, it's great and all to get espionage on a stick. I think that is significant, but in a very narrow set of cases. So you guarantee seeing an espionage against combo, for example, is like a case. Espionage isn't necessarily an answer for combo because you're going to need supplements, but I guess you can offload some of that to this guy. But other than that, I mean, yeah, you name Blue against Galaxy, you'll get something, probably.
I mean, I think if you're really worried about that, I think you would just run Chrome Dome, right?
Well, yes, but I'm trying to find use cases for this guy. I mean, the fact that you'd have to invest 2 flips to get the espionage, again, we keep coming back to it, but assuming that we see a showing off for Titan Masters, maybe that changes things. Maybe the Beast tribal card, if we get one, will change things for this guy. But yeah, the fact that this is basically the Thundercracker that already doesn't see play, and I think that Thundercracker has better stats.
Yeah, it's just you're not getting it's just you're just not a Titan Master, which whatever that has.
Yeah, the value added there.
The things we talked about before with that, so
I don't know. The discard theme is one that I like in card games in general, and it seems to continually get support with each set. It hasn't, excuse me, with the exception of Sentinels, it hasn't really been a thing. I mean, yes, Shockwave, but not this. Well, I guess I was going to say this is more pinpoint discard, but I guess he has both ends of the spectrum, and that the one mode just makes them dump things, and the other one is more pinpoint. I don't know. I'm not. Yeah.
I don't like the art either. Just put it out.
He's a little creepy.
The face just looks goofy. So
so as much as I liked Fangry's art, because it looked really cool, and I thought the way the fur looked cool, Mind Wipe's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
I like his color scheme. I don't know. But anyway,
I don't want.
Good.
I don't get, like, I have to assume that there have to be some beast support because he has, again, no other mode in alt mode. So I mean, like, I mean, I understand in this game because of the low hand size why to up star cost the discard, but like it's an ability that has a very fine line between being very good and being unplayable. So
yeah, that's what I was about to say, is that it's walking that line. There is definitely the risk that something implodes on them, and oh god, nobody ever has a hand, especially when it's attached to a character where, in this case, you know, he does the thing that, or solves the issue that a lot of discard-based decks across a variety of games have, is that your discard is then dead once they don't have a hand. So at least he's feeding you something, but at the same time, it's a when attacks, and it has a requirement. Right. So you gotta wait a turn cycle before you even get anything out of the benefit. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, that's a lot of words about a character we don't really like.
Agreed.
So we'll move on out of the bodies, and we're going to move on to bots with stratagems. And I think we were both a little more enthused about these characters. The first one up is Crankcase, who I love his name. I definitely had him as a kid, but I couldn't find him in time for the show. So Crankcase is a truck. He's melee. He's 7 stars, 4/11/2, and when you flip to alt mode, you draw a card. In bot mode, he's ranged, he's 5/11/1, and when this attacks and you have 5 or more cards in hand, he gets +3 attack until the end of battle. And he does have a stratagem, data protection, which we'll get to in a little while. So this guy, I feel more for than Mind Wipe. I mean, part of that's out of the game. I I loved him in the comics as one of the scavengers. What about you, Scott? Did you care about this guy at all?
Yes, his ability is obviously very powerful, but kind of the problem is, so to have 5 cards in hand when he attacks is not that hard if you're playing him in certain lineups, which I think obviously you'll have to play him in.
Right.
But it's not as universally easy as you think. Even like, like I go second or something like I go first and just get in there on turn 2, because what happens is it denies you being able to play a card. So really all you're doing is getting a leap into battle out of the ability instead of playing a leap into battle.
Right, but I think there is value. I get where you're going, not to cut you off. I think there's value in that quote unquote any card becomes a leap, but you have the option for it to be whatever its actual effect is, if that's more pertinent to the game state.
Right, and obviously there are certain combinations that this works really well in, like, incoming transmission doesn't cost you a card as it stands right now. So, like, if you want to make that your action play, and you're at 6 cards, let's say, at when he attacks, then you are still at 6, or what? He has to have 4. He has to have 5 or more.
5 or more, yeah. So it isn't. Yeah, you could have 5 and be fine.
So you're at 6. You find an upgrade. You're still at 5. He gets the +3. You put a good pip on top. Like that's a really good situation. Obviously, if you, as I've said numerous times, like I don't like a lot of the card draw, but this gives you an excuse if you're playing this character to quote, like, take the turn off to draw cards. By doing this, also the fact that it's a flip, it's not a flip ability, so like you could just flip him, and then sometime during the turn cycle, if you don't want to attack with him right away, you. Like Matt had pointed out, like he's really good with Wind Charger. So like what you do is you flip him on 1, you get in there with Wind Charger in your first turn, and then on your second turn, you then flip Wind Charger to bot mode, draws you a card, plans 1. You don't have to plan the 1; you just use it as a draw card. There are very few scenarios where you're not going to wind up with 5, even if you play an upgrade or an action. Then that turn, the way it turns out. So there's a lot of easy scenarios that you can set up to like you could just play Springer, for example, who draws you an insane amount of cards and usually winds up giving you bonuses. You could just play an early, pocket processor. You can just play some early, way to get Beachcomber off and things like that. Like it's not hard. Like, and you can do the same exact thing with Beachcomber. Like flip him back as long as this guy starts in play flipped, and then Beachcomber would start in bot mode. Like, if they're both in bot mode, you just use your flip for the turn and somehow set up the Beachcomber ability. You draw 3 cards. You should be able to get both abilities off, and still this guy swings for more. So, like, I just don't think you can attack with this guy, like, immediately for huge value. But in the turn cycle, you should be able to get, like, a decent-sized attack with him, which, like,
I mean, 8 is a decent amount for a 7-star character.
Yes, but the problem is, like, unless your draw is to any one of these scenarios, which, I mean, these aren't very difficult scenarios, but, like, the point is, if you don't have another bot, for example, like the Wind Charger ability or, like, the Beachcomber ability, and I know we preview both of those, but they're the ones I can think of off the top of my head, but because they're not hard to concoct, you're going to be swinging with him when you would naturally be swinging with a larger character. So yes, he gets more bang for your buck, but that bang for their buck is in deck construction, not in turn sequence. So, like, are you really going to, like, hold off on attacking with your, like, is he going to be bigger than the other guy you could be swinging with? I guess if it's 8, the answer is yes, unless you're Galaxy Prime. But, like, so I guess it's fine, obviously. But, like,
yeah,
it's he's very good, don't get me wrong, but, like, and I think you just have to build the other team around him with some of these abilities in mind to not have to depend on your battle deck to make this happen for you. So, because the main point with him is you just cannot be missing action phases to allow the ability to go off. It has to supplement the action phases, and I think as long as you build the deck.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of options with him. You called out a number of them. Perceptor, of course, and Dan's card is another potentially good home for him. There's a number of characters that allow you to buff him while advancing a game plan that you'd already want to do. And point being is that it's not going to be, well, on paper, it shouldn't be that too awkward to ensure that he's hitting for 8, potentially 11, because you'll play at least a card to ensure that he's punching hard enough. Where exactly that home is going to be, aggro versus control, I'm not sure yet, because I would love to say my 7-drop has a base 8 attack in an orange deck, but at the same time, you're probably playing cards from the orange deck in order to apply pressure, so I'm not sure that. And at 7, well, I guess he could fit into some sort of 4-wide thing, but again, you would need to then play more cards to ensure that the other team members are carrying their weight.
Or just get a very early processor. Well, you'd have to.
if we all had what we wanted all the time.
But I mean, like, putting 3 processors at the airstrike deck is not a thing. So, like,
right.
Again, like, I think you just need to be able to supplement his ability with other characters that automatically draw you cards, and I don't think that's that hard. And he is ranged in bot mode, right?
Yes.
And he is 5'11", 1, you said?
Correct.
I mean, getting the ability off is better than Barrage. So, like, obviously this character is very powerful. I have to see what the various partners you want to put with him. His flip to alt mode is so random. I can't even believe that it's on the character. Like, just draw a card. Like, you know, like he's
sure.
It's just a versatile. Like, he's just very versatile. But I just think he needs the right partners, and there's a lot of them out there. Don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know how many of the Titan Masters might have flip to body abilities that would help him as well. But I think you just changes your flip sequence. You probably can't attack with them first. I heard people saying, like, you can play those characters that let you start and play with a card from your deck, like
yes, you could.
Like Ratchet and Wheeljack, but those all seem like bad scenarios. But
yeah, I'm not.
You can do those. But...
Don't get me wrong. I've tried those, but certainly not in, we'll call it, a traditional deck. Right. It was very much of the doing something unfair variety.
Right. I mean, at that point, you're basically just all in on getting this guy to attack on turn 1 for 8, and like just play Wind Charger and attack.
I was about to say, yeah, I've heard of another card that could do something very similar.
But the two of them together, I think, is very viable. You attack with Wind Charger on 1, you attack with him on pretty easily, getting the ability off with the draw ability from Wind Charger, and I think you could play at least 1 card in that scenario, if not 2. So I do think there are ways to make it work. And I don't think that they're that difficult, and I do think you'll see a lot of play, because it's just hard to ignore a character that for that much damage for that little cost. So.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about data protection, his stratagem, which it leads me... I kind of get the bigger picture with what Wizards was potentially intending with a lot of these cards. So his stratagem, naturally 1 star, while you have Crankcase Data Collector on the battlefield, your opponents can't cause you to scrap cards from your hand. Since we were just talking about Mind Wipe, we saw a number of other characters that are discard focused. Obviously, in the past, when I brought it up a couple minutes ago, or a few minutes ago, about Shockwave and other strategies. I'm seeing the sub-theme here of they're pushing discard elements, and then this guy relies on having cards in hand, so it's obvious to give him this stratagem. Do you think this is enough to we just talked about how we didn't really care about Mind Wipe, but do you think there are enough discard elements competitively that it's going to warrant playing this?
Not main deck, but I do think it's powerful into the sideboard if you're playing him.
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume you mean Shockwave there.
Mostly, but I mean, like, I guess there aren't that many other scenarios where it's going to be on the table that you're going to be preventing. Like, obviously, like preventing counter espionage or preventing system reboot or preventing. Well, they just wouldn't. They wouldn't play a lot of these cards.
Yeah, reboot would be hilarious.
Like Like, these cards would just sit in your opponent's hand, which would be the point. Like, security checkpoint would just sit in your opponent's hand, etc. Like, so there's no, like,
somebody's going to get caught with a checkpoint. Like, this is going to be on the board, and somebody will play a checkpoint into it. It's going to happen.
The game's just over, right?
I mean, well, it depends. I mean, if it's like checkpoint, pitch a handheld blaster, it's like, yes, I lost 2 cards, but one of those cards was doing nothing, and depending on your deck, the other one was sort of fodder anyway. It's certainly not good, but...
And you lost half your turn, so...
Well, yes. Trust me, I'm not saying it's a good plan, but it's going to happen.
So I see it as sideboard only, and I think it's going to be difficult to go from 7 stars to 8 stars, because I honestly, like, I can't... Characters that cost 7 and 8 are just, like, so awkward a lot of time. I mean, 8 and 9 are so awkward at times to make decks around. So
you kind of have to have a star card in the battle deck, or you're forcing your sideboard character to, like your 5 stars coming out for a 4-star sort of thing.
Yeah, it'll probably be like your other 8 stars coming out for a 7-star, but like it's gonna make it so the other character isn't more like a side grade, not like a dramatic meta effect, you know what I mean?
Yeah, which may be the death knell for it in that case, just because you only get 1 character slot, you need to make it impactful.
Yeah.
It's tough. Oh, God, sorry.
I don't know that it'll see play, because right now the only real meta thing I can see with it is against Shockwave, and I don't think it's necessary there, so just play Pocket Processor. There's more efficient battle card answers that don't cost you a star. I think it's good. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's enough, just because the meta isn't slanted enough that way. If it does become slanted that way, then obviously it'll see more play. But the character himself is just so powerful that I just don't think you need it. That's all.
Yeah, there's that. I see what I was going to bring up earlier is chat's mentioning DE decks use this as a defensive tool, but to be honest, a lot of the things that screw with me when I'm playing DE are not discard related. Certainly an intense amount of discard can do it. There are, of course, pinpoint discard on specific turns, but now you're looking at there are awkward changes to, just like we were talking about with other decks that would be utilizing this out of the board, where you have to make some uncomfortable decisions about who the board character is, how you're going to shift around your stars, and simultaneously, again, hijack is the problem, or speed trap is the problem, or them just murdering your characters is the problem, right. More so than the random espionage on 2. Mm-hmm. It's certainly annoying, but it's not the end of the world in a lot of scenarios. So maybe if that becomes the premier strategy against it, that these mind wipe decks take over. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it'll have play if the meta warrants it. So you can't really ask for much more than that. So
absolutely. So let's move on from Crankcase. Let's talk about Outback, Autobot Outback. So Autobot Outback Gunner is a truck. He's melee. He's 3/10/2. He's 6 stars. And when you flip to alt mode, you may scrap an upgrade from your hand. If you do, draw 2 cards. And then in bot mode, he's ranged. He's 4/10/1. If an opponent's card would cause an upgrade to be scrapped from this, instead you may scrap an upgrade of the same type from your hand. He also has a stratagem that we'll get to momentarily. I have to admit, I don't know why, but the first thing that went through my head was the Wave 2 Megatron effect with this flip. And
okay,
I don't know why, but I mean, it's effectively the same thing. Granted, one requires the attack step, one's just a flip, but that was the first thing that came to mind for some bizarre reason. But random cards popping into my head. Do you like this guy, Scott? Are you excited about Outback?
He's just half a sprinter, right? On the flip back, right? It's just...
Yeah. I mean, it requires that mode, but yeah.
Yeah.
Or requires the card type, rather, not mode.
I do like the ability. I don't know that it matters on your 6-drop. What are his stats in bot mode?
410-1. So I think the obvious thing is he gets an armor, protects the armor, hypothetically. And it doesn't have to be an armor that you're scrapping to keep it alive.
You just pitch any upgrade.
Yeah, it's any upgrade, but at the same time, it's, I guess to your point, are you really planning on loading up armor on your 6-drop?
Yeah, I mean, it's not. This isn't bad at all. Like,
of course,
it just gives him more value. And 6 is a really really awkward like slot as it is. Like, and so I think he's fine. I mean, 4-10-1 is pretty decent for a 6-drop. I think it's the same stats as Beachcomber in that mode. So, like, compared to the other 6-drops we have in the game nowadays, I mean, I think he's perfectly fine. The ability is good. It's just, I mean, like you said, like, does it matter, like, on a 6-drop? Like, does it matter on a guy this size?
You'd have to.
Not, but
I guess the argument is, does this guy go from soaking 2 hits to 3 hits? And I feel like that's still a big ask, because they could just, instead of bashing shielding, which is not going to go through clearly, if you don't want it to, or you could just let the armor die because the upgrade in your hand is more important, but they could just load up a weapon or play an action and crush this guy and snap him in half anyway.
Yeah, the problem is that you need an armor to keep him alive, or a utility that pumps his hit points, like the one we talked about earlier.
Well, if he has an important, so I guess the hypothetical here would be if there's if it was a weapon or a utility, obviously armor's in there too, but I think a lot of those are doing what the card type implies. If there's a weapon or utility that does something important, like the first thing that comes to mind, just because you've been bringing it up, is you could stick a processor on this guy, and if you need the processor to live, it's not going away. Like, they have to get at him. So hypothetically, you could protect something like that. I can't think of anything immediately that we care about enough to do that.
Yeah, he was a leader. You do the same thing with Matrix, but he's not. So, like,
yeah.
You're right. I mean, that's perfectly fair. Those types of scenarios are definitely where he's at. I just don't know that, like, it's going to matter, because you basically have to get it. You have to play like a weapon or a string of combat actions to make his attack relevant, because he's so small. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he's small, but his star cost is small also. So, like,
yeah,
he's probably fine. I mean, like, the ability on a character that size is probably fine. I think he just competes with, like, Beachcomber and things
he
like
could.
That.
So here's one other addendum to him. In an aggressive build, you can play Force Field on here, and it stays alive.
Yeah, that's fair. On either build, it stays alive. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I have. Well, at least there, it's okay. You need the force field to survive because you need to buy that attack. Whereas, again, in the controlled decks, it's just a matter of, do I care? Chad has 2 interesting things. I'm going to lead with the latter first. Potentially OA stuff to try and keep things alive, but
that's fair. But his arm still gets rid of him.
Yeah, and it's also because he's a truck and not a tank. Like, a lot of the supplemental OA things and a lot of the OA cards anyway are Decepticon related. Well, maybe not a lot, but Terrifying Resilience, composite armor again because he's not a tank, that sort of thing. Yeah. You'll have a different set of hoops to jump through with him, but there's potential there. But the one that I was leading up to is you play him with Skull Smasher, and it's Steve Irwin deck.
There you go.
How about them apples?
That's a good one.
I think that's a good way to close that out back. So we'll move on from the bots with stratagems.
Speaking of Outback, I can say unequivocally, in the last year, I've had a resurgence going back to Outback Steakhouse, and it's been quality again.
Has it?
Just putting that out there.
Interesting.
At that level steakhouse, I think it's the best compared to the Longhorns and Texas Roadhouses of the world. I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay. I will readily admit I can't even recall a time. Actually, no. I remember, like, my freshman year of college or something, my family wanted to go out, like, move-in weekend, and yeah, it was a disaster, as you'd imagine, trying to go out to eat on move-in weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we ended up. And after significantly longer of a wait than you would want for an Outback Steakhouse, let's just put it that way. But anyway, moving on from there, we have our, I guess, solo stratagem for this show, and that is Bike Gang. And,
wait, what about Outback strategy?
Oh yeah, I did skip over that. I apologize. I was looking at the list and I'm like, wait, did we talk about that? I got so hung up on the Steve Irwin joke. I'm like, we're just moving on. You can't top that one. Shout out to chat for that one. So systems enhancement, when you upgrade Autobot Outback Gunner, draw a card, then scrap a card from your hand. So he'll be 7 stars.
So he becomes a Wheeljack.
Yes, for 7 stars.
He's fine. I mean, it's the same example of what happens to him. Are you going to be loading up this 6/7 star character? And like, you're obviously getting value every single.
Mm-hmm.
This is an example of a stratagem that obviously is a straight upgrade. Like no pun intended. To the character. So
right.
If you have the star, you'll play it, but I don't think you will because I think the value in him is 6.
So the unfair player in me says this is a cheaper Wheeljack, like you said, and therefore does the card filtering matter? Because I've definitely looked at a variety of Wheeljack related combo centric builds over time, and sometimes 9 stars is just, it's a lot. So getting the same effect, and especially, I mean, Wheeljack you didn't have to flip either, but you can do this in his alt mode. Like, it doesn't require that he's in bot mode or anything. So therefore, there might be something there, or there's the potential for something there to create some sort of engine.
But he's not a specialist, so you can't go with like all those cards, right?
Right. That's one of the advantages Wheeljack has, which is probably, I mean, Outback was not going to be a specialist anyway, I guess. But I'm sure that was, as they were assigning abilities to characters, that was part of the discussion at some stage. I could see something kind of, in my mind's eye, a little bit out there where it's hazy enough that I can't quite decide. But it is something to keep an eye on, because for only 7 stars, that's a relatively trivial cost to get a potential engine. It's just going to be contingent on, like you said, if you can't use the specialist stuff, we're looking at, do you red heat? Padding. Yeah, extra padding, attack drones. You could red heat things over. So, like, if you moved, not the specialist upgrades, but scrapper gauntlets, drill arms, and crushing size.
That's true.
Draw 3, then draw 3, discard 3. You could do something weird. Maybe. It's just one of those, keep it in the back of your mind as we see the rest of the set.
It will make your turns more efficient, just like Wheeljack.
Oh, absolutely. But to that point, the loss of stats compared to Wheeljack, even though he's less stars, I think is going to be prohibitive. But
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I think now we can safely move on from the bots with strats, and we'll talk about Bike Gang, which, I mean, not that I was real excited about getting to this one, but here it is. So we have our Chromia, Wave 1 Chromia stratagem, and it reads, when one of your motorcycles attacks while you have Chromia special ops on the battlefield and you flip at least 2 white pips, that motorcycle gets +2 attack until end of battle. And, sure. Like, I wish I had something to follow up with, but I distinctly recall when this was revealed, I was out walking the dog, and I saw a bunch of notifications that a new card was revealed, so I look at it, I open up the app, I'm like, all right, well, obviously there's Chromia, and everybody remembers Flame War. I know there's another Flame War. What are the other motorcycles? And
RC.
Yeah, because she was slipping my mind at the moment, and I was like, I think there's 4 or 5. There's 4 currently, and I don't really want to attack an alt mode with any of them.
Exactly, that's the problem.
I don't know. You can put Chromia alongside your boat patrol team,
right?
And get in there.
Yeah,
I guess.
This is not very good.
No. Chat saying Chromia was a star too expensive as it is, and yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah, she's not like. That's one character I could say is like. I mean, I'm pretty confident she's the least valuable Wave 1 rare and remains so.
I don't think at any point anybody was ever really excited about her as a card in Wave 1, to be honest.
It was like combo potential because she can get back to white. So like when she can we can get swap art, bigger deal.
Yeah, but, I mean, so rather than anything specifically about this card, in general, the throwback stratagems outside of Cosmos have kind of left much to be desired up to this point. And if I recall correctly, there's 10 that were throwbacks, and we've seen what, like 4 or 5 at this point.
All 3 rares.
Yeah, this one, Cosmos, and I don't remember.
Volcanicus.
Yeah, so 6.
Cup from Wave 1.
7. Uh-oh.
Yeah, the weaponizers don't count. They're like second.
Well, they I guess they don't count as the 10. I don't think
they count. I don't think they count as one.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was like 20 of them were specifically this set, and then 10 were any old set. So, I mean, regardless, it's where I'm going with this is they've definitely left me wanting more. Just more on virtually every front. I've not been blown away by them, which is a little disappointing because I always like when those legacy cards come out to breathe life into some of these things. And I guess overall it'll be fine because a number of the stratagems for the new characters are playable, or at least a consideration. Cosmos is leading the pack right now, so maybe Cosmos will be running amok. Yeah, I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. I love the idea, and it definitely feels as though it was similar to what we've seen with other mechanics and card types and other things that Wizards is treading carefully.
Yep, I agree.
So, but anyway, we'll move on from Bike Gang because I don't think there's really much else to say about that, and we're going to talk about the one and only Titan, well, only head Titan Master that we got this week for reveals, and that is Vorath. He's our 1-star tough 1 head. He's 2-1-0 and tough 1 and ranged in in bot mode. We kind of surmised that this guy was going to exist, and chat beat me to it, but he is a grumpy Gus in his head mode, and it is hilarious to me. I don't know why. I saw this reveal real late. I think it was last night, literally. I couldn't sleep. I see this guy, and I had to choke back laughing from the artwork to not wake up my wife because I don't know why. It just amused me to no end because he's a grumpy Gus. But as I said, this is something that you and I were kind of speculating about on the last show, I think, when we were talking about Parsec or whatever show that was, that we were expecting it to show up. So here's the $65,000 question, or with inflation, it's more than that. But do you, Scott, feel that this is the better option than the 1-star health head?
In general, yes. The problem is it depends on how much direct damage he's going to see play because of the 1 health. Because, I mean, it's the best defensive head to help out the Titan body, sure, at that star class.
But 1 health, I mean, none of these have an exceptional amount of health, but you're absolutely right that a single solitary hit point is really pushing it in a world where, I don't know, we've seen a couple bodies that could, and other characters that care about direct damage or can do direct damage in this set alone, let alone past precedent.
Yeah, I wish he was 2-2-0 instead of 0. But
I mean, I would take a 1-2-0 to be honest.
Yeah. He is ranged. So that has value. It's going to come down to whether or not he can survive. He becomes the head and becomes the body. And the one upside that I can say is that because you're going to be playing him in a control deck, there is a chance that you're just like run your opponent out of options at that point.
Yeah, they had to expend all their resources prior.
Yeah. Like if they one-shot stand him or they throw a javelin at him, like, well, first of all, they throw a javelin at him. There's nothing much you can do about it. And
well, he's soaking the attack anyway. I mean, I assume if this guy pops off, he's getting in first.
Right. So you can't hold back with him at all. Like, you get in there with him, and you have to have a decent hand to make him values.
See, this is why the +3 help thing exists. Problem solved.
Fair. I mean, he's obviously good, and I think he'll be the default still for control decks. But I do think that he may compete more often with Kreb than I would have thought, just because he has the one hit point, and I'm just kind of scared of that. But on the flip side, as long as they're not like holding a hovercraft or like for some reason like holding a zap or something like that, then I think you're okay. But the problem is, like how many characters have we seen at this point that like can do direct damage?
Accidentally ping something?
Yeah.
I mean, Horrible is gonna have a feast.
Yeah, Horrible, Skull Smasher, like any character we've ever mentioned.
The Bludgeon deck is just every other card's gonna do a damage because that's what the deck wants to do.
Right, and I think we mentioned multiple characters that combo with Bludgeon, so like that's the problem that I see is that like, but like you said, as long as it pops off, you just can't expect him to actually block for anybody, but he may block an ability from somebody. Like if he eats a one-shot stand after you attack with him, I'm fine with it. If he eats a javelin, I'm sort of fine with it as well. Like I'm definitely fine with it.
Oh, if it's a javelin, I'm okay with it because he also then soaked the attack. Yeah, it's just a matter of how many zaps are in the environment, because I mean, by the same token, it's, and I think this is where you were going with it, Scott, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but let's say he eats an out of combat burn card, a zap. Is that decreasing your opponent's maximum damage capacity for the turn significantly enough, because now they're getting in on whoever they want, that it's still okay? And in general, like my default answer to that is no, you're probably in real bad shape if that happens, but maybe. I don't know. I personally, I would lean towards towards Kreb, Serpentor, because just because of the head body, as strange as that sounds. Did you ever watch the show Scrubs, Scott?
A few times, yeah.
There's a recurring gag that they have in there with floating head doctor, and that's what just popped into my head now. But anyway, digressions aside,
how does this work if your opponent has Quake?
Let me pull up Quake off.
It's whatever one of the characters dies. One except for Quake. So like,
well, he counts Quake too. If Quake dies, if I recall correctly. No, I don't know where you're going with this. So I don't know if that's if Quake is in play in the right mode, and they take out the body that this is attached to, does this guy just automatically get KO'd, or because like is an active player that gets to choose the order of effects? Like I think it's in this game I think it's all the turn players stuff goes off, and then the other players stuff goes off.
So it would be beneficial, then you would survive then.
Yes. Now everybody out there listening, watching, don't quote me on that yet. I'd have to go back and check, but that is a good point to bring up.
I'm just thinking of characters I actually like am a fan of that have these direct damage abilities.
Mm-hmm.
So like, assuming that that's not the case, assuming that like that's okay, then it's okay. Like, it's just gonna, like you said, it's just gonna come down to like, what ability are you actually soaking, and what does that do to your opponent's turn? Like, the worst case scenario is obviously the horrible, where it's like, and oh, by the way, and it doesn't really mean anything.
Oh yeah, this is a scenario when we were talking about sideboards and the head characters and the bodies, that if your opponent's playing Horrible, you probably want to sub this guy out if you have the opportunity, because they're just playing cards and he's going to die. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Or maybe, well, I guess they would have enough black pips. I was going to say that the tough one and stuff would keep the body alive long enough that it won't come to that, or that won't come to pass. But yeah, they're going to be running black pips, obviously. So it's...
Does he have 1 defense or 0 defense?
0 defense.
Yeah, I mean, he does not have the flintlock survivability, I'll tell you that much.
Yes, that is correct. And I guess as we're talking about this, it kind of feels like this is where it would have to be, because then otherwise, if this guy had more health, he kind of would be the default defensive head, I guess.
I still think it is, because to me, the Titan Master's bodies that I envision wanting to be in the defensive decks would prefer tough 1 over 2 hit points, because as long as you're soaking, essentially, as long as you're soaking 3 attacks, you're ahead of the game, getting tough 1 head. As you're playing a defensive deck and you're soaking 3 attacks, I think like you're either getting really unlucky, demolished, or like not playing right. So like they should have more value.
Gotcha.
In that situation, like the way I see it, like especially like because a lot of the Titan Masters have like double-digit hit points and like all these things that should help the situation, or like, you know, Cup already has a tough 1 built into his alt mode, so now you're getting tough 2. Like, you know, it's always the same argument. Like it's still going to come down to, are you soaking 3 attacks? And that'll be the break point for these two. Like, you know, and we'll require testing just to keep track of like, if the tough 1 helps me soak a 3rd attack, then it's better than getting the +2 health, which, you know, probably doesn't really.
Or you could be like me and remember the one time that someone armed hovercraft, you blew you out, and you're like, nope, never again. Never again.
Right. I mean, it does have a downside, like and there is a lot of playable direct damage in the set, so like, you know, I do agree that there is a downside to it, but I don't think it's, I think it's still fine, because it definitely does help the bodies a lot, and a lot of them, like, this will help because of their massive hit point totals, so.
Right. Yeah, he's definitely going to be on the list for testing for sure. You have to respect what it's going to provide to these various bodies, and at such a cheap cost. To your point, actually, from last show, is that the extremities are kind of where the heads, at least right now, appear to be making the most waves. The middle ones are they're kind of roughing it at the moment.
Yeah, when I was listening back, there are 2 3-star, the Pierce 4-1 and the 5 health, the 5 hit point one. But other than that, like, I'd rather be on one of the polls. So
right. It looks like chat is confirming what we were saying, if I'm
about
reading them correctly. Yeah. So if you resolve your effects in your order, then your opponent chooses the order of their effects. So if your opponent attacked him with Quake, Quake would go off, and then head would pop off.
Good. Okay.
If I'm understanding what chat's saying correctly. And I'm pretty sure that is accurate. But as always, I like to double check these things, and that's why I always tell people don't quote me on it.
Yeah.
So that actually does it for this evening. Believe it or not, we came in at a cool 90 minutes.
Not too bad.
Yeah, we've certainly done worse. Shout out to Cameron. Sorry, man. we started a tad early this evening. But anything else you wanted to add, Scott, as we're closing up shop?
No, I don't know how many more cards we have. I think we have. I think somebody said there's 6 characters left, and probably like 20 battle cards. I want to say, maybe less.
Yeah, and then however many stratagems, unless you were counting that in the 20 there.
No, I'm just thinking the number off my head. So
okay.
Like I would say like 5 or 6 stratagems, and I think the article mentioned that, and that like almost that every character that's not a Titan Master has a stratagem in the set. So I think like at least 3 of those characters that haven't been showed could be regular characters, so those could be the stratagems.
Right.
And then again, there's just X number of battle cards remaining. A lot of common battle cards. So
Yeah.
Oh, we do know that there's 3 reprints, so that's 3 of the battle cards. So
3 reprint battle cards.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cameron's saying 7 more characters left. Obviously, we've seen Optimus on the box art, so we're waiting for the inevitable there. I'm very curious what the remainder are going to be. I mean, to be honest, I'm still very much looking forward to the other throwback stratagems the most, but I have tempered my excitement, we'll say.
I imagine the characters, it's Optimus, Megatron, Twin, whichever
Topspin,
I guess.
Yeah, we got Twin Twist.
And then other people have said other like beast characters that have appeared with some of these characters that I'm not familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't follow like the alphabetical thing, so I don't really know like where other things fall into play. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure somebody figured it all out.
2 of them will be heads then. 2 of them will be heads then too. Optimus's head and probably Megatron's head.
Yes.
And Topspin's head. So there you go. So it would just be, if they're all Titan Masters, there's 6 of the 7 that we're missing right there. So
yeah, that seems logical. It seems logical. We're definitely at the stage where you can kind of pinpoint these things, given that we have so much information now, which is actually cool. I'm excited for the complete spoiler so we can really evaluate things. And we'll definitely have some exciting stuff for everybody when we close out spoiler season. So I guess that'll do it for us. Anything else you want to add, Scott, last second?
No, I still think this is, as it stands right now, I still think this is like a top 3 bordering on top 2 most powerful set in the game. So
yeah, I'm very excited about this set. I do have to say it's definitely in a number of different ways gotten the gears turning, a little smoke coming out of my ears sort of thing. And we'll see what the remainder brings. But thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for watching. And please tune in next time for more Tech Talk.